Woo! Exciting. All right, so there was a guy recently in the comments, I believe it was responding to maybe an ambient improvisation, and he said that he would find it really interesting if there was kind of a rundown of how I maybe think about using pedals in an ambient or even improvisational context. Off the bat, I want to apologize ahead of time. I'm recovering from eye surgery right now, and I can see, I can get around, but I can't really drive or easily read things, so there might be a bit of clunkiness. But I thought that his idea was actually really good, to maybe just kind of return to this board a little bit. I've had other videos on this board, but kind of talk about what some of these pedals can do and how I use them. And also, I've got this kind of like sidecar tabletop thing going on here. Very clearly inspired by Mr. Nels Klein. And we can kind of talk about the two of those. So first off, what's the board? What am I playing? This is an airline guitar. I actually gave this to a friend in 2017, and I never expected to get it back, but we ended up trading guitars again, and it's really fun playing this thing. It's a beautiful guitar. It goes into a fuzz. The fuzz goes into an overdrive. The overdrive goes into a sustain pedal. What's cool about that is it's got this little wet box here, so I can sustain while playing, and you'll hear just my normal guitar signal. See, it's kind of in the background there. But I can kind of turn my guitar into just the wet signal of this pedal itself. Which I think is really pretty. From there, we go into a delay pedal, into a looper. This is sort of the guest spot on the board right now. We've got a special edition shallow water. Usually it's my girlfriend's Gen Loss over there, but it kind of depends, context wise. And then from that shallow water we go into the Deco and the Flint. Now, I should mention the Deco is essentially a faux tape machine. So anything a tape machine can do, from flange to double tracking to delay to chorus, the Deco can do. And it can also do tape saturation, so sort of a distortion sound. And the Flint is just trem and reverb. Up here, we have got the 16-second delay. This is by Deco Labs, but it's a clone of the Electro Harmonix original. And that is a delay / sampler. It's always listening. So anything that's been done at least 60 seconds, this is the extended recall time. So not just 16 seconds away, but a full minute ago. Anything that I've been playing is always being listened to and played back by this. I just have to turn it on to engage. We've got the Chaos Pad, which has like 100 effects. It's all touch operated. Right. And then tying it all together at the very end is the Catlin Bread Belle Epoque Deluxe. And this is an Echoplex and a Deluxe Memory Man, actually. So it's cool. There's like Space Echo on here and Echoplex and Deluxe Memory Man on here. So where do you start? Because this is a lot of shit, right? I mean, I didn't just go down to the guitar store and buy all of this in one day, right? This is the culmination of I've been playing pedals since at least 2016, 2017. So this is the culmination of years of, deals and trades and, Zounds Zounds payments and and just kind of finding what I like and how I like to use it. So for me, there's a few key things about each of these pedals that make them great for improvising / ambient music. Now, I know a lot of people like using microcosms, and Walrus Audio has some cool new stuff like the lore pedals and all that. Pedals that sort of take all of these elements of spacey sound and distill them into one box. I actually prefer more of a modular setup. And by that, I just mean each pedal is kind of doing a separate part of that chain and that overall sound. The blooper is incredibly useful. One of the things that I really like about it is I can have these buttons on the bottom, which correspond to onboard effects of the blooper. I can have them preset to some sort of sound that I like. So in this case, there's a filter right here. It's going to be a little bit low passed. And then right here, I've got reverse and pitch down. So I can be playing something, right? And recording it. And when I let go of the record button, it's going to come back to me with these effects already on it. So let's say maybe, you know, it's like a little theme kind of a thing. Maybe I like that, right? So you can see that becomes very useful. Something that I can do with it as well is use it almost like a synth. I can change the pitch now that the sample is put in here. So right there you can see I was using the top part of the Deco. This kind of picks what effect you're doing, whether it's delay or flange, chorus, you know, whatever. If you move it, it does fun little tape noises. And then there I can change the pitch of the sample I have, but also kind of fade it in with the volume knob. So you can play it like it's an instrument. You know, it's I've got it so that the pitch just jumps in, I think, fifths and octaves. And it's more useful than you'd think. It's a really cool kind of production effect. A couple other things I was doing, I've got a little favorite switch here. Usually I just have a plate reverb on there, but whenever I hit this, it brings it to the 80s reverb, which just kind of gives me a longer decay. Similarly, if I touch this, then it brings on a slapback echo there. So this blooper I use to make samples appear out of nowhere, you know, often reversed and filtered down so that they don't get in the way of what I'm already playing. I will sometimes just get down and play it if I really like the sample that's in there. Another thing that's really cool about it is I can use it as a decaying looper, the same way that the El Capistan works, right? Because if I've recorded something, this right here is on eternal loop, right? But when I bring this down, the loop will start to fade out. Now, earlier I mentioned how this thing is always listening. So let's see. on. What it's doing right now is it's playing back what that looper has been playing. And I can pitch it down, I can pitch it up, I can change the length of the loop. I can reverse it. I can change the pitch of it. All right, that's when you want to get really experimental. And as long as this is down, it's frozen the sample. So even though I've got that blooper going on in the background, it's not being fed into this. If I turn that off, then this will be capturing any information that comes through it. So right now, it's live sampling from the blooper. But remember, the blooper is fading out. So you can have two separate noise machines going on, sort of interacting, and then use this for live tape sounds. If I have, if I have this thing really set low, I can have the loops kind of fade away almost immediately. But as you can see, that's super useful because if I ever feel like I played something and I want to hear it back, I can jump over here to the electroharmonics thing and bring it back in. And it's nice sometimes, when you let go of the guitar, it's nice to have music still going, right? And that's where the loopers here really come into play, is I can have something still going. And it can be something that's not static either, right? It can be fading away, or it can be, reversed. One can feed into the other. So when you're considering an ambient or an improvisatory setup, for me, loopers are really important, not to be able to play like the way buskers do, where something's really in time, and everything is kind of, locked to a grid, but as a sampler, they're great. You can have them chilling in the background. You can play them as instruments themselves, right? They're very, very useful as things that can capture small bits of information. Another good way of using this blooper is like, I can just kind of time a little note. Now I've got a pulse coming back at me from the blooper, right? Pulses are very musical. Those can be very helpful. Come over here. Another thing that's useful is multiple delays, right? So while this is a delay, I use it as a sampler. And while the blooper is a sampler, it actually can be used as a delay. And while the Deco is a tape machine, it can also be used as a delay. So what I really use as a delay here is the Catlin bread up there, very much positioned at the end of the chain so that I can just sort of have something that glues things together, repeats. Something you have to consider a lot with ambient music or improvisatory music is you need all of these fail safes because it's very much a high wire act. I think some people might misconceive of ambient music as not a lot of notes and only drones, bleeps and bloops. All of these are obviously part of it, but you are interfacing with technology, and you can only really make music with that technology if you are very, very familiar with the limits and the uses of the technology that you're using. So I have things in here that if something goes wrong or if I need to switch something up sound-wise, thanks to the loopers, I can have something playing if I need to. Thanks to having the delay at the very end of my board, I can have information repeat a little bit longer. And sometimes those couple of seconds is all you need, So having a delay earlier in the chain is helpful. I've got this line 6 is my favorite delay of all time. Line 6 Echo Park. This has reverse delay. This has multi-tap delays. There's 11 different types of delays. But something I actually use it for quite often is as a swell. You'll notice I don't have a volume pedal set up here. If you set this to swell mode and you bring the mix all the way down, it's not going to repeat anything. But if I play something, it's an instant swell effect. Which brings us to another tenet of ambient music, which is having something that dulls or hides your attack can be very useful. Now, for a long time, I just used Telecasters and had their volume knobs kind of always in operation with my pinky, right, for swelling. But then pots would get dirty. Then I would use volume pedals, but same thing, pots would get dirty. And I found out this is really my favorite solution. The Line 6 DL4 can also do this. So most of the time I have this, it's actually not being used as a delay. It's an auto swell. But should I choose to want to have some delay going on, I can always, with a quick flip of those buttons, Now here I can, give you another example of, let's say, I've been playing something and whatever, has been going on musically has been based off of live interaction. I can take elements of what I just did, have them down here to transition into something else, right? I can take this time to set up pedals differently, maybe turn this back into my auto swell. right? It's very useful just to kind of have as a base layer. Kind of just winging it here by playing and then thinking about what I'm playing and how it could relate to the question that the YouTube commenter had. Fuzz and fuzz and distortion I use fairly normally when it comes to ambient music. They're for the bigger moments, cymbals, drums, big hits, maybe just some dissonant playing, Something I like doing with Fuzz too is combining the random modulation and the low pass sounds of the shallow water. My bad, this Benson is very loud. You can see it gives it almost a percussive sound when you pick lightly. But when you really dig into the fuzz, it's at once softening the sound, taking out a lot of high end, but it's also kind of wilding it out a bit because of that random modulation that the pedal gives. So sometimes you can take elements that might seem counterintuitive, like people think of ambient music, I think they generally think of calming stuff. And not to say that I don't use the fuzz in calming and uncalming ways, but typically when I think of a fuzz, I don't think of it in a calming way. But you combine it with something like this, and you can then have the textures and the unreliable kind of timbral nature of the fuzz tamed a little bit by this pedal, and that can end up being a really cool voice to have in a mix. The thing I probably use the least in this whole context is the distortion from the light speed right there, but very much a useful pedal. The Flint and the Deco, I think you could have an entire ambient board just with the two of those. So let me maybe talk a bit about that. The saturation on the side of this Deco is incredible. Let me just max it, bring the volume down so we're not killing ourselves here with sound. Just right off the bat, this beautiful chewy sound. You can bring in, this is really testing my vision, I'm so sorry. Bring in some modulation here. Something that's also very useful about this, I tend to keep it kind of on just as a tube emulation. When you hold down this side, it becomes an auto flanger. So it's kind of a 3-in-1 effect. And flange is also a sound that I think is just very beautiful on on ambient music. It just takes your normal chords. Here, we'll make it in an actual flange mode here. It just takes normal chords. Gives them something very subtle and beautiful. And of course with the Flint, I mean, you can get anything from really vibey, big reverb sounds to kind of the space sound I was talking about in my preset. Very long decay, right? And you can add that to sustain sounds. Remember earlier I was talking about how something that's very useful is any pedal that can extend a sound that you're doing. So that can be delay by extending it with repeats. That could be reverb by just extending the actual sustain. I want to show you what that's like without that. Much smaller, right? Still a cool sound, but with it on, much vibier. Right? And something that I think is often overlooked is tremolo. You can get a slow, almost like univibey kind of sound out of the left side of this Flint. Which is great as a calming sound. Right, it's kind of like a vinyl, like a sound system coming in and out. But you can also, with the photocell trim, this is something that's really cool. You can add texture to a sample that's already going. Like, let's just take something random here. Let's say this is my sample that's playing. We can give some throbs and wobble to that. Using photocell trim can also be very useful, even if it's just a drone, right? Now you take away the movement and the bigness, right? And what I just did sounds like this. Again, it's nice, but these things really make the sounds come alive. So what I like about this, as opposed to just like, I don't know, putting a hologram microcosm on the board, is that I have options. I can turn motion on and off. I can turn decay and reverbs and all this stuff on and off. And I mean, there's just so much information to cover with all of this. That's why I kind of jumped into this without really a plan. I just figured I'd play and kind of make combinations. These are just some of the ideas of how you can get pedals to interact with each other and play them like instruments. But I hope that this was helpful and eye-opening. And if anyone has any questions about this from this video or anything else, just let me know.